Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to Life on the Wrist. Hope you guys are doing well today. We discussed recently if one could actually make passive income from investing in watches, which is obviously a passion of mine and probably is yours if you stumble across this video. We did a video where we kind of explained the different time horizons when it comes to investing and if you actually can make money. My conclusion from that was it's a much more sure thing if you are going to invest in watches as tangible assets. Over the long term, you could probably see that those assets would increase in value, as opposed to speculation over the short term to try and make quicker gains. I think that comes down to that's really the conclusion that comes from any type of investment strategy. But I thought I would actually give you guys some information about something that's really come up within the last 10 years, and that is watch investment funds. If there are any watch investment funds out there where they invest in tangible assets, which are watches, and they hold them to increase in value, and you can actually give them your money to invest in that and expect a return on your investment. I'm going to go over a couple of the ones that I found and also give you my thoughts on whether putting your money into this type of investment fund would be a good strategy. But before we get into that, if you haven't already, and I say it every single video, be sure to smash that like button for us for this video, as well as subscribe to the channel if you are new here. We cover things about, basically we create videos about watches because that's exactly what we're passionate about. If you like those types of things, be sure to subscribe and turn on that notification bell. So the first step that I wanted to do was try and research some of the investment funds that are out there. I knew just through my watch journey, I knew that a very famous watch collector, Alfredo Paramico, did actually create an investment fund that was devoted to buying and selling watches. And this was a fund that he started, which was called Elite Advisors. And so I started doing a little bit more research on that and trying to gather some information about the fund. If you actually go to their website, the first thing that really stood out to me was they were established in 2008. So within the last 12 years, this has become quite a big thing. But something that is a caveat here is they actually don't just invest in watches. They also invest in wines, in vintage watches, in precious stones and jewels, classic cars, yachts, etc. So this is really a tangible investment fund that focuses on, you could say luxury goods, but things that are going to cost a little bit more. And their role is obviously to structure, source, and manage those tangible assets. And this is something that I thought was quite interesting for someone who's so passionate with watches, like Alfredo Paramico. Creating a fund of holding on to watches is extremely interesting. What I thought was quite interesting about this fund is that essentially you are giving them their money. You'll be providing them money so that they can purchase these tangible assets that will hopefully appreciate in value. You really don't have any connection with those watches, as far as I know. I bet you there's some details that could say you could probably go and see the things that they invest in, but I didn't get that much information about this fund. What I also thought was interesting about this is this was described as tangible assets. It wasn't just a fund of vintage watches. So they are managing their risk by investing in multiple different asset classes, if you want to call them that, which I think really balances the risk of these different tangible assets. Like I said, over the short term, watches can be a tough thing to speculate on and create and get a return over the short term, but over the long term, you can definitely find watches that will appreciate in value. I think vintage watches, Alfredo Paramico is famous for saying vintage watches, there is no vintage watch bubble, which I thought was a big stance to take, especially on something like vintage watches, which in my opinion is a niche within the watch world. So I thought that was quite interesting. The first thing that I found was Elite Advisors through Alfredo Paramico, and obviously there is a possibility that these will appreciate in value. If they were established in 2008, they're obviously still doing fairly decently, and so I think you can expect that there would be some type of return here. I did find an interesting article on Rolex Passion Report where they actually discussed the assets under management, and it looked like at the time, which I think was 2012, there were around 14,000 euros that were under management. What I also found interesting was that there was a 2012 performance. I guess this was at that time, it had appreciated 0.2%. So 0.2% appreciation for that year. I don't really know exactly when this report came out. It looks like April, so over 4 months it appreciated 0.2%. Now, like I said, over the short term, you shouldn't really expect a very large return. But 0.2%, you can probably get a better return if you put your money into something else over the short term. But again, I think the purpose of this is because you're passionate about watches and that you would want to hold these for a long period of time to hopefully appreciate in value. And so, this is another way of diversifying your money. I also found a website that was called watchfund.com, which it seemed as if they were essentially the same kind of concept. And what was interesting is they kind of went into their concept of what they wanted the fund to be. It's very, very similar to Elite Advisors, where they were going to be purchasing watches and holding those to appreciate in value. Something that I did find very interesting is that they kind of called out a 20 to 30% return is what you could expect and you'd be fairly happy with. I thought that was a very, very interesting number to really call out as a net annualized return. I think that is pretty bullish within the watch world. I personally don't know what their returns are like, but a 20 to 30% return annualized is a fairly good investment. If you think about, you compare that to something, if you took the same amount of money that you're investing with this fund into the S&P 500, you can expect a 7-8% return, and you can do that fairly passively. Here they're saying you can expect something like a 20 to 30% return, which pretty good. It's a pretty good return. I would want to do a little bit more research, but I think that was an interesting number that was thrown out there. Again, conceptually the same thing. Buy watches and hold them so that the assets can appreciate. What I also thought was kind of interesting is that I think I remember them calling out the fact that you can actually interact with the watches that you are investing in. And I think that's a different angle to a lot of the other types of mediums that you can invest in, put your money with when it comes to investing. So what do I think about watch investment funds? Well, I think it's an interesting concept. I think it really does show that you're passionate about watches. I think it really comes down to the fact that this is probably a way that you can diversify your asset mix when it comes to your investment portfolio. And so I think this is a very structured way of doing it. What you could also do is do some research yourself, figure out what watches you think will appreciate in value, buy them, and then hold them. And that's essentially what you'll be doing. I'm sure that these funds probably charge you some type of management fee, and that's something that you should consider when thinking about doing something like this. I think this really is a passion project for whoever started these, and it's a really cool concept. I think it's a cool concept. Do I think it's worth investing in? That's really up to you to decide, but I did say that there is an alternative to putting your money into a fund like this. Obviously, these watches are probably going to be, the watches in these funds are probably going to be a little bit more expensive, watches that you probably can't really find, especially if you do. If you look at Elite Advisors, where it's mostly vintage watches led by Alfredo Paramico, who is obviously going to be purchasing some extremely rare vintage pieces. So the watches that you purchase probably won't be at that level, but you're not probably going to interact with these watches very, very much. So that's another thing to consider. Overall, I think this is a cool concept. I think it really shows a passion for this industry, and I personally think it's another way to diversify the assets that you have. I think if this was a little bit more prevalent, I'd probably be able to find more information about this online, but they're really, the watch fund and Elite Advisors was really all I really dug into. So let me know what you think about watch investment funds. I'd be very interested to hear what your thoughts are on them. Also, if you know of any other watch investment funds and you know some information about them, be sure to put a comment in the comment section so that we can all learn together about watch investment funds. Also, if you did not do it in the beginning of the video, be sure to hit that like button for us if you enjoyed this video. And with that said, guys, thank you so much for watching, and until next time.